Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Nate Miller from DigiFX. I figured today I'd make a quick little video on how to get 3D character rigged and set up for gaming engines such as Unity or Cinema 4D. You kind of have to use a few programs, whether you want to bring it into After Effects for more production style animations or lower quality poly counts utilizing Unity or something like that. So, just to give you guys a heads up, go feel free to check out my site digifx.com. Some projects, some of the services we offer, and I'd love to get involved, help anybody out that's interested in learning more about the different aspects of digital media and utilizing the web. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the very first thing you need to figure out is to determine where you're going to get your 3D model. Now, you can either model it from scratch in something like Cinema 4D or Maya or 3D Studio Max. And this is just, we have Cinema 4D open right here. But, that can be kind of tedious. And if you're like myself and you really don't want to start from the very beginning, you can utilize some of the pre-existing 3D models on the internet that usually are textured, and some are even rigged, and occasionally you can find some animated ones. And it saves you a little bit of time, and you don't have to worry about every little step because there's too much to be done in the world of game development and development of anything, whether it's video or web. So it's cool to find short little tricks to speed up the process. So one thing we can do is there's a site called most of you probably know of it. It's TF3DM. It stands for the free 3D model. And if you come here and you click on this little icon right here, there's various 3D models that are free to download. You can see there's all different kinds of stuff that we can work with, and most of the time they'll just be modeled and textured, which is good enough, but occasionally you can find a rigged model, which just simply means it has a skeletal structure, or even an occasional one that has animation like I mentioned before. But just to give you a heads up of the kind of stuff that to look for, you really a lot of people like using OBJs because it's one of the most simplest forms of a 3D model. And you can also bring it in and make image sequences with OBJs by exporting it from Cinema 4D or another 3D program. I tend to like to stick to FBX or Cinema 4D files only because that's been my recent 3D application of choice. I use a lot of After Effects and Element 3D, which works really well with Cinema 4D files, and I can also export FBXs for Unity, so that seems to be the way I like to go. So I recently, and I already have this, but let's show you what I had. I found a character that I've been using for one of my game developments. Let's see if we can find him right now. Yeah, I don't know where he is. It was just, well, anyways, I'll just show him to you right here. So I have this boy that I found on this website, and if I come over here, you can see, and we'll get into how I rigged him and stuff, but he's just basic textured. When I had him, he wasn't rigged or animated, and I had to do all this stuff post. But I found this guy, and you can see, the rig isn't quite perfect. I think is just right here. The pivot's a little off, but for starting player character in my gaming engine, it works great. And I have a lot of key features, animations that I can utilize and program after we get it set up. So this is an example of the guy I found on that site. So go ahead and check around and see if you can find something you like. So once you find your character, oh, that's fun, naked guy. once you find your character, whether it's an OBJ or a Cinema 4D or FPX, then the next best thing you can do to speed up the process is go to a site called Mixamo, and they just recently merged with Adobe, which is really awesome. Adobe, as we all know, is a creative leader in software development for stuff like After Effects, Premiere, Photoshop, Media Encoder. The list goes on, Illustrator, and Design. And so the fact that they kind of jumped on board is a good sign for good things to come with this site. And this also saves you a lot of time from having to rig and set up a 3D character manually like you used to have to do. And when I went to school for 3D animation, we were taught how to do this, and it was very tedious and took a lot of time. And I recommend using stuff like this. And it isn't necessarily cheating if you save time and focus on the stuff that's important, which is actually making your game, your animation, which will eventually make you money, versus spending the time setting up a character. So don't always think that you're skipping stuff just by moving along. So once you have your character, you can basically sign in. As you see, I already made an account here. And the cool thing about this site is that the first uploads and animations you download are free, and eventually you do have to pay, but I haven't really utilized it that much. I just set up my first character, and then a lot of my NPCs that I'm using in my gaming engine are already animated, so I don't have to worry about it. But you can come here to the upload 3D character, and you can see there's different formats you can use. I'm assuming the zip is just a zipped version of one of these other three, but the FBX is a common 3D model that embeds the texture materials, which reference the textures in a gaming engine, and OBJs, like we talked about before, is one of the most basic 3D models you can utilize. Both very powerful, and this is a Blender file, I believe. I'm not really too familiar with Blender, but I've used it a few times. So you go ahead and select your character, and you'll upload it, and I'm not going to do so because I already did that, but once you upload your character, I'll just kind of show you what it gives you. So this is my boy character before I change his shirt color, and it gives you your nice 3D character in your characters folder right here. And if I just go into my edit rigging, this is kind of the state of what I had to do before, and this is kind of what it looks like when you upload it. And if I go to next, there seems to be some kind of bug in their site where if you look at this picture right here, there's actually pivot points that you can line up your character, and this is really awesome because you can auto rig essentially the joints in the skeleton of the model. So I'm not going to do it because I already done it, but basically you come in here and you set it up. It's really easy, really self-explanatory, and just make sure I recommend using the standard skeletons. If you don't want the hands to move or stuff, you can bring have less pivots and less joints, but more the better in most cases because it brings the model to life a little bit more. So once you have it auto rigged, you can essentially figure out what kind of animations you want to add to it, and you can see I have tons of animations that I found for this guy. And just to give you so let me just come in here. So let's see. Here's an example of some. So you can just basically add pre-existing animations, and there's a few things you want to look out for. Like I said before, the pivot on this character, he wasn't really set up in a T-pose, which if you're not familiar with a T-pose, it is the starting point of when you rig a character, and his arms in this circumstance were kind of like a little bit forward and down to the left and right. So the rigging had a little bit of issues with, if you look at the wrist, and this one doesn't really show as much, but if you see when he bends back, it's a little funky, so you gotta look out for that kind of stuff. But like I said before, it really, for this just getting it into my game, it doesn't really matter. I'm just happy to have a model rigged with some animations that I can kind of program into it, and then eventually go back and update it to make it look better. But if if you come along here, you can see there's tons of animations, and we can even just if I want to just add some more animations, I'll come in here, and we'll just see what we can find. So there's all kinds of stuff, and if you come back to the front page, like I showed you before, oh, that's not the right one. So the store, these are kind of some packages that have pre-existing animations for a certain type of character. I'm essentially using a magic and a locomotion, so this is a good one to start with, and it kind of runs through the different stuff that your character will have. So I'm not going to really go into detail about this kind of stuff. Just know that the only thing you want to notice here is that if he's not animating in motion, like see how he's moving from, you want to make sure you check. There's a little box that says cycle in motion or cycle in place, I think it is, and that's going to be important for when you rig it to bring it into a gaming engine, because if it's moving forward, it's going to kind of be messed up. So you want to make sure it's only animating cycling in place and not moving around like this guy is. So I'm going to go ahead and just move forward a little bit. And now we're going to jump into, let me see here. Okay, so we have my pre-existed boy. And as you can see, I already have attached these animations. So, but I am going to make some updates so I can actually show you how I've done this. I would start over, but there's just a lot of work, and to save time and to really just move forward, I'd rather just show you what I've done and how I can tweak it. So if I just play through this real quick, I have a basic, and that's a bug, it should be moving, I don't know why it's doing that, but it might actually just be that the keys got messed up. But anyway, so there's an idle, he's looking around. I should have a walk cycle coming next, yep, and then I have a side strife left and right, and then you should have a run sequence, and then same for running left and right, and then we have a jump, and we have a sword, and we have a magic spell number 1 and a magic spell number 2. And so that's basically all you really need. One thing I did forget to include in this first one, which I'm going to include now, is a die sequence, and I want to change the idle too, because this idle is, it's kind of, when it cycles in the game, it looks kind of weird. You'd rather have just a still cycle in place, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. So starting off, if you don't have a character in Cinema 4D already, what you want to do is just basically open, or you can merge either or, one of your existing, let's see, 3D models, originals, animated, oops, wrong way, 3D models, exports, and we got here. Okay, so you want to make sure you import one of these animations, and these are what you export out of the website after you get the animations set up to your character on Mixamo, and these are actually from Mixamo. And there's other ways to get these animations. Like I said, you can set them up in Cinema 4D, Maya. There's other places, but you want to make sure that you import both the 3D model, which is just this FBX right here, and these are just the animations. So in some circumstances, the model will actually be connected to the animation. In other circumstances, it will just be the animation. So you got to make sure you are aware of what the FBX file includes, and just know that moving forward that's important in order to stitch these animations together in one model. So a lot of these I've actually already implemented, so I need to kind of figure out which idle I'm going to change it to. And I can just tell you, I'm thinking just basically by the date I modified them, that these are the new ones that I need to add. and so that makes it easy. So I'm going to go ahead and just import the idle 3 first, and let's make sure that I want to make sure I'm merging, not opening, so I'm pretty sure I am, but okay, so merge it, and this is all fine. I usually don't change that, and same with the select take. I think the Mixamo one's fine. Okay, so you can see here now in this circumstance, and if I were I'm just going to go ahead and turn off these so you can just see just the skeleton right here. Okay, so what we get when we import that is just this idle rig skeletal structure, right, with all the pivots, and this is all set up when you upload your model that I got for free in Mixamo, so it's pretty awesome, and it saves you tons of time. And in this specific model, there were a number of different layers for his skin, his clothes, and hair. So, most of the time, basic 3D models will only have one model, so this is a little bit more complicated, but it basically works the same, and I only really have to use his skin layer mesh to set up the animations, because everything else is kind of attached to that or on top of it. I guess that's the best way to explain it, but that's another thing to be aware of. So I'll just basically unclick that so you can see, well, you can see here that if it's only, this is what only his skin looks like, but I only basically have to retarget one thing in this circumstance, but you will have to have them all visible to see the full buoyant effect. So if we come along here, these are all his animations, but I want to add the idle. So first thing I'm going to do is take the newly existed animation I've imported, and I'm going to go ahead and name it to something that makes more sense. And this is just for my reference. You're going to go ahead and rename it again when you bring it into Unity or another gaming engine to get it rigged. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then put it kind of in order of what it needs to be in. And this is going to be a little bit more tricky because I'm adding it in an existing timeline versus lining it up from the very beginning, but it's the same kind of concept. You're going to have to target it, and I'll show you how to do that right now. So with everything else turned off except for his body and this one skeleton, I'm going to go ahead to Window, and I'm going to come down to Timeline. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to go Window and Timeline. Okay, and the timeline essentially is like a timeline in any kind of editing software, where you have the frames, in this circumstance to be frames, sometimes it'd be seconds, that come by, and they're in one of the same. It's 30 frames per second, so this is 1, 2, 3 seconds, and the animations kind of are in the timeline as you play. So the new animation of Idle 3, you can see, is overlapping my other ones, and we need to fix this because that's gonna hurt us in the long run when we go to realign it in the gaming engine. So the easiest way to go ahead and just add this in here is to take well, actually, before I do this, I want to show you one thing, and that is we had to add on the model, and like I said, you do this in whatever mesh you need to utilize. We have to add a character retarget tag, and the retarget tag essentially points at a certain animation at a certain time. And if you're familiar with any kind of keying software like Maya or Cinema 4D, you have to key certain points, and in this circumstance we had to key the animation at the certain time that we wanted to use. So as I move along the time, scrub through the timeline, you'll see the animations in the source right here actually change because it's switching different animation. This is how you kind of attach them all to the same model, which is which is before they were all on their own model, or in this circumstance they were just animations. But sometimes you have to delete the model and to retarget them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to basically retarget it, but before we do that, we want to make sure we align the timeline in the appropriate order. So this is our retarget layer right here, and these are all our animations that we have to move afterwards. So I'm going to take everything from the walk up to retarget, and oh, well, actually no, it's I don't want to select these retargets, everything after this. So if I go ahead and just shuffle this over a little bit and select this portion right here, and we're gonna have to play around with this a few times, so we're just gonna go ahead and bring this all the way over here just to get it out of the way for now, and we'll come back over here, and now we'll just go ahead and select the idle 3 right here, and I'm gonna want to zoom in for this part because you really want to line this up per frame, and it's a little tricky because there's a lot of frames and the window's only so big, but I'm gonna go ahead and just bring it over a little bit so you can see it, and line it up to the edge of that layer right here in the timeline. So it lines up pretty well, which is good. That's what we want. And now we need to fix the other side so that everything else aligns. So I'll come to the end over here, zoom back out, reselect, and I believe I actually, I'm gonna have to double check the retarget because this may have been, I may have taken a retarget that should have stayed over there, but we'll just have to fix that. So it's good to kind of see how we do that. Yeah, so you see there's 2 retargets. So one of these retargets actually I was supposed to keep, but I didn't zoom in far enough. So again, I'm just gonna kind of zoom in and make sure it is lined up appropriately. And instead of moving this, I'll just re-key this to the new animation. So that's pretty much good, and bear with me if you're a little confused about this key point right here. It'll make sense in a second. So everything's kind of in place. You can see that up to idle 2, the retarget's there, but what we have to do is we have to set a key point for the end of this now because we've added a new one. So I'm going to come to the very end of idle 2 right here, and this is why it's good to zoom out so you can be on the exact frame, and then we'll click on the retarget right here, and we'll make sure that there's a key point for idle 2, and now we'll just jump over 1, so that's at the beginning of idle 3, and we'll come to idle 3 right here, and we'll drag it into the source point and then key that point. And so what it's done is essentially switch the animation to play on the certain model. And now we're going to come down to here, and instead of adding a new, well, we have to add the new one in again to override this keyed point. And let me see, so this goes here, we'll drop that in there and rekey that, and then this should be perfect. Okay, so now it's back in the walk. So all we had to do was add a couple of key points and shuffle it over, and now we have this new idle in our character. But this is going to cause a few complications in the imported model that I already have, because now I'm going to have to realign the key points there as well. So let me go ahead and just pause the video real quick and get the rest of these key animations added to the character, and then I'll come back and show you guys how to import it into Unity and get it going to be a game model. Alright, see you in a bit. Okay, welcome back. So I basically had to, in the beginning you saw there's a little bit of, it's kind of funky here. I accidentally retargeted something, which is why. So I just had to fix that, and you can see now it's just flowing. I have my first three idles in place. This idle 1, idle 2 should be this one right here, and idle 3 should just be kind of dancing around, as he does right there. So this is the new idle I've added, and if I zoom all the way to the end, we can see that we have now the die, or I think in this place he's just falling over because I didn't want to make a kid die in my game. So he's just kind of falling over and doing his thing and flopping like a you know. But anyways, another thing I forgot to mention is that we want to make sure that you maximize the frames to the very last endpoint of the last key, and you can, you know, this just basically it completes the animation cycle sequence, and you can also tweak this by just setting it in the gaming engine, but I like to do this just for good practices in my rigging setup. So last key is 1080, so I have a basic 0 to 1080 framed character with animation rigs, good to go. And you know, that's basically it. That's how we get them rigged and set up for Unity Gaming Engine. And I'll just go ahead and just make sure everything else is good to go, and it looks good. So let's go ahead and save this out. So to save it out, it's pretty straightforward. You come down to export, and you are looking for an FBX, and you export out as an FBX. And if I come to my desktop, I will just go ahead and name this boy character 2, and well, actually I have to make sure. So this boy is referencing textures in a specific location in my folder. When I export this out, it's not going to have, basically the path to the textures is going to be broken, so I'm going to have to realign them. So that's just something to be wary of. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we export out all the settings we need, and again, I haven't really ever changed any of these. I don't really see anything that's super important, except for making sure the texture materials are there, embed the textures, and normals may be somewhat important. All this stuff looks good, so let's go ahead and export it out, and we have it. So once that saves out, which it should save out in a second, I believe, unless it's doing it now. Yep, it's still saving. This is the video I just filmed earlier. Okay, so there's our boy character right here. So we are good to go. So let's go ahead and get him set up for Unity, which, if you're not familiar with Unity, it's a free gaming engine. It's basically how I develop my games. I'm using a gaming platform called Plygame. It's for about $50 in the asset store. If you come here and just search for, if I can, let me search for it. Let's bring this out. Okay, I don't know where this. Well, let me search, but right here. Yep. Okay, so Plygame. So it's important that you find a specific, plugin or extension that allows you to program a 3D model of animation to interact with other models and factions or teams or races, or whatever it is that's going to make your game interesting. And Plygame is pretty good. They have a forum, very active up there. I just kind of go through this. There's a visual scripting system right here, and you can make quests, and you can see this is an NPC, and this is his, the vision he can kind of attack you on, and this is a character and kind of the setup. So it's a pretty good system, and it's relatively affordable. There's some other ones out there that you can use, but I have found that this one's pretty well rounded, and it has all the stuff I need to make a basic game. So I'm sticking with it. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way. And I've basically added Plygame by downloading it and importing into my test project, Unity test project right here. So you need to make sure you have Plygame installed, and once you have it installed, it's pretty much very easy to get a character rigged and everything up and running. So we want to make sure that we have in the assets folder a new folder, create folder, and let's just call this player model, and name it whatever you want. And we can just go ahead and drag our FBX right in here, and it will upload it and find everything that we need except for the textures, I believe. So let's see if it says it can't find the normal, so let's try to fix that. And we now have our boy character, and surprisingly it actually seems to have found the textures, which is nice because sometimes you have to realign them, but it's added some weird extra shaders to it, so we may want to go in there and tweak those a little bit. So if I go into the materials and just click on this, and I'm not going to get into much about texturing the model, but it's as simple as just bring the smoothness down. But this is just kind of the first look of what he looks like in Unity, and we still have to make sure we set up the animations and rig the character to appropriately work as a legacy character. And it's important to note that there's a few kinds of characters you can use. Legacy, which utilizes the animations attached to the model, like I have done, and then there's a Mecanum model setup, which is a little bit more universal, where you have animation that you can place in any character, and it incorporates in a lot of the Unity. It's the newer way of doing it. The legacy method that we're going to use in my case is a little bit more easier to set up and use, and it's as a more of a creative guy and a developer guy, it's a lot easier for me to kind of get the animations I want in the character and in place and running. But I would recommend figuring out both methods and figuring out also which one works best for you and your circumstance, because the legacy method we are using is a more traditional method in the past for setting up a character. But anyways, let's go ahead and just delete this character and find him in the project window, and we'll just click on it once, and you'll see right here we have different aspects. Now I forget I think it's, if it's 0.01, there's the scale factor to Unity and other models. I think it's 0.01 to 1. This guy as a 1 here, he's pretty small, so I think I wanted to export him bigger, but what you can just do is just come up here and make him bigger, and it will apply it, and if we re-import him once it's finished making its changes, he'll be a lot bigger now, and this is more the size of the game that you'd want him to have. But You know, the scale factors are something you got to figure out, and I know you have to definitely change it, and I forgot to do that, but no worries. So let's go ahead and go into rig, and we need to make sure we're in a legacy animation type. And again, if you were to use the mechanism, you'd want humanoid, generic. I'm not really sure. I forget what it's used for, but it's going to make sure it's set to legacy. We'll go ahead and apply. Let that do its calculating in the back end, and then once that's set, we'll go over to animation. Okay, so if we play right now, you'll see we'll have all our animations on our character running in a giant clip from 0 to 1080. And this is nice that we have the animations attached, but it doesn't really help us when it comes to playing the different animations in time in our game. So we need to go ahead and split these up again. And there are ways of using the animations separated as we had them before, where it was like my character at the animation name and it references it. But I actually like having it all on one model because it makes it easier for organization with all the models. But it is an extra step, and if you do want to utilize just having the separate animations attached to the model, that's also another way to go. But this is the way I like to do it, and it's kind of how I taught myself, so I stick to it this way. So we basically want to make a clip for every different animation we know the character has. So just going in here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 animations. I added 2, the idle 3, and the die. So I know right away that I have to have 14 clips. And you know, you can either do them one at a time and same amount. I try to just get it all done and over with up front. So 0 through 13, 14. Okay, so actually we have one extra because I forgot this one. So 14 clips right here. And the next thing I'll probably do is just go ahead and rename these so that it's easier to reference them, and I'll go back and change them again. So idle 2, and you're kind of seeing the process of how you separate these again, which is why what you name them in Cinema 4D is just for your reference, and what you name them here is actually what you need to remember in order to line it up and program it with the gaming engine, because whether it's how you spell it here is exactly how you're gonna have to reference it down the road. So make sure you remember and keep in mind what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And left walk, and it doesn't matter what you name them as long as you can remember, and also remember the order you had put them in. Otherwise you will mix up your names with your actual animations. So run left, and it's also important to note that you always want to have an underscore or something. You never want to have spaces when you're programming, because a lot of programs don't recognize spaces as characters, so it can throw off and throw errors at you. Okay, and then I'm blanking on what came next. So right, jump, sword, magic die. So we have a jump, and we'll just call this sword attack. And again, you can name these whatever you want. Magic attack 1 and magic attack 2, And lastly, die, or let's just say fall over, because again, I don't want this. I want this to be kind of PG-13, and I don't want to have him die, just kind of pass out, kind of thing. Okay, so I'll go ahead and apply this real quick because we're halfway there. Now we have to make sure we line up the frames correctly. And this, to me, is kind of the biggest pain in the butt because it's very specific, but I find the easiest way to do it is to come in here in your timeline and kind of look at the key points like you did before. And I'm just going to come back to the idle one, which is right there, and look at where that lines up. So that's 100. Okay, and what I also do is I only put in the endpoints. Okay, what's going on here? It seems to be thinking. Oh, it's still applying the names. Okay, I thought it was done by now, but once it's done applying the new names, we will start doing that. And just give it a second. My Mac usually. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and start realigning these. And I'm not going to bother with the startings because I can just subtract one from the endpoints every time. And that saves us a couple extra steps to doing this. So come here. Okay, that's 221. And we'll put that in there, and so on and so forth. I'll try to do this quickly, so bear with me, and I'll also make sure that I just bounce this over so it's 1 less 1 right here. Okay, 221, come along here, 522. And you kind of see where we're going with this. And the other ones are easier because they're not as long. So 544. Oh, I got an update. 554. Okay. And this is kind of, we can even look at two at once. 586 and 618. 586, 618. Alright, let's try to do a couple more. I don't like to do too many at once because I'll forget. The 662 and 662 and 683. 662. 683. It is a little time consuming, but this is one of the hardest parts. 704 and 770. 704, 770, and 4 more. So we got 832 and 902. 902. And the last two right here, we have the 969 and of course the 1080 like we ended. So we don't even have to change that one. So 969. Okay. And then basically it's just adding one frame to the existing one already in there. So let's just do that real quick. 970. This would be 903. And if you didn't make them frame to frame, this would cause conflicts with your animation, which is why I try to be very precise when I'm doing stuff in Cinema 4D, so that this is kind of easier down the road. and 684, and let's see, so that's 663, and I have to kind of, sometimes I second guess the number I said, so I say it out loud to remember, but 619 and 587, okay, 555, that one's pretty easy to remember, 523, and this one would be 222, another one I like, and this one is 101. Okay, and I believe it starts in frame 0, so that's correct. So everything looks good and is in order, so we pretty much have set up our new character to be animated in the game. So let's go ahead and just apply these settings, and it will take a second, and we will be ready to get our character animated and walking in no time. So the last thing I want to show you guys is kind of how to set this guy up in Plygame. So again, this is only specific to Plygame, which is the gaming script that helps you create the game. So if you're using something else, you're gonna have to figure out that specific plugin's method of setting up a player character. So keep that in mind. But we're going to use Plygame to set this up. So I have this guy, and let's just double check, make sure everything's how we like it. So scale factor is okay. He's rigged to be legacy, and his animations are all named and correctly distributed. So that is awesome. And to confirm that you've done this correctly, if you click on your FBX that you imported and you click this little drop down now, you'll see all the animations have now been separated into separate clips that are attached to it. So you're pretty much good. This is the state you want to have your FBX in the gaming engine in order to use it. So I'm not really sure what the Cinema4D editor is. I've never really worried about it, but I've also noticed that that's something that gets imported. That may be there may be a way to remove that, or it might be some kind of shortcut of editing these. We'll have to look into what that is, but let's just go ahead and focus on the rigging itself. So we're going to go ahead and drop our character either in the scene or in the hierarchy right here. And you'll see the first thing we'll notice is the transform and the animations, and these are the clips attached to it, and this is awesome. So the transforms are 000. Now this is important, we want them at 000 because when you start setting them up, if they're offset, you're going to screw up a lot of the pivoting and the anchor points and stuff. So make sure everything's zeroed out except for the scales. And I'll just name this guy Boy. Alright, doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to go ahead and create an empty game object, and let's just call this one controller. And how you name these and what you do is, what I like to do, just a quick tip is, if it's a player, I like to put his, so if it's player, I can even say this is Boy instead. So so now I know it's a player. Now if it was an NPC, which is an enemy or something that attacks my player, I put NPC in parentheses. And so whenever I have these prefabs set up, this is how I know if it's, if there's different versions. And I can even show you, like, we could have my character attack my character if we wanted to, but we won't worry about that this second. So you see, by adding that model into the new game object, I've moved the position of it. So we're going to have to go ahead and zero these out to make sure that it's correct. So let's just go ahead and do that. And it would have been easier if I just zeroed this bottom one out. It would have fixed everything, but now I have to do this. So okay, so he should be zeroed out, and if we press F, we'll zoom into him. Okay, and you'll see also notice that the shaders are something that we'll want to fix. So again, to fix that, you can just go into his materials, and you can click the skin, and I would recommend actually upgrading to, like, there's better shaders you can use, third shaders you can buy, but just for this default, we'll just turn that down so it's not as shiny, and that will, it's not that big of a deal, but you kind of want his hair shiny, I'm assuming, but you don't want his skin to shine. You probably would want to use different shaders for different types. So if it were skin, we'd probably want to come in and find a nice skin shader. And I don't know if there's anything default that's in here, but you get the point. Find the correct shaders, get good ones, download them, buy some nice premium ones, and you can make your characters really look good in the game itself. So we have basically a game, a controller, and then the FBX, and it's important to make sure that the arrows and pivots are in the same place, which is why we zeroed them out. So now that we have that, we can start adding the Plygame scripts that are going to make this guy work. So from the Add Component menu, come down to Plygame and Character, and this is where you would choose between if it's in somebody you're going to fight, or your player, and third person. Okay, and you'll see we have to fix that, but let's not worry about that this second. And let's go ahead and come down to Plygame camera. We need to make sure he has a camera and third person camera. Okay, and this is just a script. So one thing that I should mention is, let's just delete this. Just because we added the third person script doesn't mean there's a camera in the scene. So we're also going to want to create, come up to game object, create camera. We're going to want to create it, and it's nice to create it when it's in the zeroed position, because it really lines it up nicely, and then you can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't really matter where it is, because the script will put it in a certain place, but I like to hover it right above his head, like that seems to be a good spot for it. So, and next you're going to want to parent it. Okay, so our player boy now has the FBX model with the animation in our camera now. And the last thing you're going to add is just a animation. So if we go to Plygame, character, animation, and we are going to use the legacy animation controller. And this is where, depending on what you set up, is what you would choose. And I went over this earlier. Legacy controller is what we want. So we're basically good. That's it. If I were to start playing this now, you would see nothing would really happen, because he doesn't have any animations or controllers set up for himself, so he's a little confused on what to do. So let's go ahead and fix that. And we are going to make sure that, oh, I'm sorry, I forget. We have to make sure that the Plygame system is set up. So you're gonna want to make sure you run the let's just test 2. We're gonna make sure you want to run the update right here, and you're gonna update all this stuff, and this is gonna actually set up the system. And then we're going to go back into our scene where he was, test 2. And here, we're going to want to make sure that we have a class set up. And you'll see I've already set up a class, but you need to make sure that you have a class that you put. Every single model that you bring into the game has to have a class, whether it's the player class, or an enemy class, or a dinosaur class, or an alien class. They need to have classes, and in addition to the class, you need to make sure that the attributes are set up under the class. So I just made two attributes here, and if I click on them, all I did was press plus, named them, put them in these two spots right here, and then added all down here. And then I didn't even change default levels, which you'll want to eventually do, but just to set it up, this is all I had to do. Very simple, very easy to accomplish. Okay, so once you have the player class set up, you're going to want to get familiar yourself with a few of these scripts in here. So the actor script is essentially what calls a lot of this stuff. So we're not going to get into the factions or skills here, but you'll see I set my class right here. That's very important to do. If you don't do that, you won't be able to use the character. So set up your class right away. You can name it, all this stuff, and that's what you have to do. Next thing you want to do is come down to your third-person controller, and you're going to want to make sure that your movement speed set to your liking and your turn speed set up. And let's just go through here, and we're going to want to make sure the allow jump is turned on. You want to toggle that, right, because you want them to be able to jump. Unless you don't have jump animation, and that's it. And that if that's the case, then you don't want them to jump, and you just keep it off. We'll come down to the third-person camera script next, and we will make sure that's all set up. And this is all fine for now. I'm not going to play with that. The other thing I want to change is, I forgot to tell you this, the character controller. So this is important too. So if you look at the floor, and right now there isn't a floor, so I'm going to go ahead and just make a terrain. Okay, so, and just so he's not going to fall off, you need to have a floor for him to walk on, otherwise you're going to have problems. So he has a terrain, he's good to go, and that's something I should have made in the very beginning, but I overlooked it. So going back in Urboy, you'll see that the character controller is falling through the floor. So if I were to play this right now, he would probably fall. Let's just say. Okay, so I still have to set up a few things in order for it to work. So let's go ahead and do that first. But before we do that, we want to make sure that the character controller is set up. So we're going to go ahead and just add 1 to it right here so that it aligns at the bottom. And then we're going to make sure that the height matches the character's height. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but he looks like 4 is right about correct. And then the radius seems to be right, but you can always make it, fatter, skinnier, whatever you like. I'm just going to keep it how it is. And okay, one thing, why is that? Okay, so it looks like it actually is going through the floor still, so let's go ahead and bring this up to 1.5. Let's bring it up to 2. And it looks like this probably has to do with the fact that I scaled him up afterwards, and that may affect this. So you just want to make sure that he's above the terrain. Oops. And okay, let me go ahead and do this. So 1.9. Okay, that seems fine. I'm not going to worry about it too much. You get the point. So 3.7. Yeah, he's fine. He's the most important thing is that the bottom lines up with the bottom of his feet, and it looks like, I'm just gonna get this right just so we don't. That looks fine. It looks like he's. Let's bring him up a little bit like that, and he'll kind of fall in place. So he's above the terrain, and again, he's a little bit too tall, but you can tweak that on your own and get it to your liking. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Okay, so next thing we got to do is we got to make sure we target the camera. It's saying, hey, there's no camera. So very simple. You come down to the camera script, and you'll see target camera. There's no camera. All you got to do is come in here and drag your camera in place. Boom. That should clear that up. Next, we got to fix the clips so that it knows what it's doing with the first animation in place. So we'll go ahead and minimize all these scripts but the very last one so we have some room to work with. And we're going to set our animations. This is all set up. The animation is the boy, which is that right there. This has the animation on it. And our character controller is the player boy, which is this one, so that's all correct. And we'll just come in here, and these are our, remember we named these a certain thing, this is where they come in. Now you can either click on these or you could just type them in directly, but keep in mind that they have to be exactly how you typed them in the animation tab. And when you go to reference these later in the game for certain quest or certain, like when you do the attacks, you're going to have to make sure they're exact. So keep that in mind. So we're going to use idle 3. Remember I wanted to change that. So fall over is going to be death in this circumstance. Jump's going to be jump. And the rest of these, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in that. I'll say copy and paste. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. So we have a left walk and we have a right walk, and same with this. We'll go walk, and it looks like I got these backwards. So right, left, and right, left. Okay, another thing to notice right here is you see this little R that stands for reverse. We want to make sure these are reversed because when you're walking backwards, you want to make sure it's backwards. Okay, for the run. And if you're not familiar with what this is, like the difference between walk and run, I would read up on the Plygame documentation, but essentially when your speed is above 4, he's going to run. So same thing here. We're going to go run, and what's going on? My computer was tweaking out for a second there. Okay, run, run, run right, run right, run left, left, and then backwards, backwards, backwards. Okay, everybody cross their fingers, as this should be the complete setup, and now he should work to our liking. So we'll go ahead and just save the project and press play and see what happens. What do you know? We have our character, and he is, let's see if he runs, and he runs. Does he jump? He jumps. Does he run backwards? Yeah, it looks like he's running forwards, but that's he runs side to side. And that's it. We have our character set up in Unity. So all that work, and this is what you get. You get your first character in Unity set up. And just to kind of show you guys what you can do with the extra animations. I'm not going to do anything this second, but if you come into your skills right here, you'd come in here and you'd create a skill. And if I said attack, let me call this, this is where you'd set up your other skills. And this is where you start programming your character to attack different things and different NPCs. And it's all built in Plygame. So there you go. I hope you bared with me and it wasn't too long, and that you now know how to set up a character correctly for a gaming engine. And I also would recommend looking into the other types of rigging systems, different file formats, shaders, and character structures, and enjoy. Talk to you later. This is Nate Miller from DigiFX. Bye.